Well, hello there, happily married woman. It is Dr. Siobhan Parad here, and I wanted to come on and talk with you about the right way, like the right way, the right way of communicating. And, it made me think about the very first time I did my first online workshop. And my mom was listening in, and, afterwards we were talking, and she was just so, like in awe, or her eyes were open to like a different way of seeing things. And it was a topic about mindset. But she said to me something that I will never forget because she was so passionate about it and it was so true. And she was like, we were never taught this. Like, we were never taught to think this way. We were never taught to speak this way. And as I thought about our culture, the African American culture. I know this group is filled with women of all ethnicities, but when I think about our culture, I find that communication is something that we really struggle in. We struggle in terms of being able to be vulnerable. We struggle in being able to have language and words to accurately describe how we're feeling. We struggle to connect with other people because we feel like we have to have our guard up because we don't trust, the people that we are interacting with. And I think a lot of that comes from our historical experience in this country for sure. And it's left a legacy of distrust. It's left a legacy of feeling like I have to look out for myself because no one else is going to look out for me. And I think we carry that mentality, we carry that mindset into our marriages, even though we unite with our husbands with full love, full faith that this person is dependable and that we can really trust them. But once we really get into it, right? Once real life starts to happen and, he disappoints us or things go wrong, that residue of mistrust and that residue of feeling like I can't let myself be myself completely comes, and we communicate with each others in ways that create more distance, more disconnect, more division rather than uniting us, bonding us, and creating more intimacy. And as I was thinking about it, I think about even, just how we talk in my family sometimes, or how I was raised. We are not so accustomed to the niceties of communicating, right? So a lot of times when we talk to each other, it's demands, right? We're placing demands like, go get that for me, or put this over there for me, or bring me that, right? I think about, even in my own home sometimes how we speak to our daughter, right? Our children, we just place demands on them, like, just go do this for me. And it comes from this place of kind of entitlement. But also I think it just comes from a lack of awareness and a lack of being intentional about being polite, right? That when we're in a work environment, when we're in a professional environment, when we're in another situation, we know that we have to turn on that common courtesy. We have to turn on that politeness. We have to turn on that diplomacy where we can't just say anything that flies out of our minds, right? We control our tongue. We have a filter. We can press the pause button in those situations. But when it comes to our home life, when it comes to the communication and the conversations we have with our husbands, why does that go out the window, right? Why do we communicate in a way that places demands instead of requests? Why do we communicate in a way that's judgmental instead of being more open-minded, right? And I think about some of the conversations I hear other people having, whether that's, out in public or even, in my own coaching practice. And it concerns me because I just don't think that we are aware. I don't think that we have been taught how to communicate in a way that brings us closer, more intimate, and more connected to each other. That we are so in our own feelings sometimes that we're not aware of how our words come across to the other person namely our husbands. And we make demands, right? We have judgmental questions, which are questions that sort of like, why would you do that? Or what made you decide to do that? Or who in the world does something like that, right? That's just our natural way of talking sometimes. But those types of questions, I would categorize them as sort of like judgmental or assuming questions. They promote defensiveness. And I'm sure when you ask your husband things like that in that way, it's met with resistance, defensiveness, and maybe he's pointing the finger back at you. And that creates more distance, right? And we just don't know any different because no one ever told us. And a lot of times we think like, well, I've been communicating this way all my life. It hasn't, been a problem in other situations. This is how my family talks. This is just the way I do it. And when we unite with someone else for the rest of our lives, we have to stop doing the things that we think are okay. But when it comes into the context of our marriage, it's just not working. Right? Because it's not that he needs to adjust himself to our mode of communication or that we need to adjust ourselves to his mode of communication. It's that we need to, together as a couple, find our own way, our own language of communicating, our own way of conversing and discussing with each other that brings us together, that helps us to get a better understanding, that enables us to truly listen, to compassionately understand, and not to make judgments and not to make assumptions and not to criticize each other. And so, as I think about the work that I do, as I think about the things that I've studied, the books that I've read, the endless hours I have trained myself on communication, on how to speak to someone, I find that I really want to share it. Again, I can't tell you how many times I hear people and I'm like, oh, like, have you really been on the other side of what you just said? Like, I have this ear to hearing the damaging ways we communicate with each other. And I'm not claiming to be perfect at it because I'm not. I catch myself a lot of times. But what I wanted to just communicate in this live stream is that you can actually learn a different way. Like, you can actually be taught to do it the right way, right? And it's not something that is beyond you. It's not something that you should just know. Like, when in your life have you ever had a communication course on how to talk to your husband, right? Yet, whenever I poll this group, whenever I poll my audience and I ask them where are they struggling the most, it's communication. And so my question to you is, well, what are you doing to try to get it right? Right? Are you hoping that he'll just start to understand you? Are you hoping that through trial and error you'll figure it out? And maybe you will, right? But if there was a quicker way, if there was a better way, if there was a right way that you could learn inside of a week to really give you the tools and to equip you with the strategies and to tell you the right approaches and to teach you the right words and to help you improve your tone and delivery, would you take it, right? Would you be interested in something that could show you the right way? Because you can learn the right way, right? With anything in life, you can learn to do things differently if you're willing to, if you want to. Anything you want to learn how to do is available to you to learn how to do it. You just have to ask yourself, like, have I recognized that the way I've been communicating is not working? And am I motivated to change it so that maybe I can get some better outcomes? As I think about the work that I'm doing, you may have heard, maybe not, maybe this is the first time you're hearing about it, I've just released a new training. It's called The Communication Cure. And it's all about how to express yourself in a way that your husband can receive positively. It's all about listening to understand instead of listening to respond. And it's all about how to diffuse conflict and tension and end conversations on a positive note. These are tried and true techniques Like, I didn't make them up. I've added my own spin to them, of course, but these are things that research has proven, has been tested with hundreds and dozens and hundreds of couples, and it works and it changes things. In this course, we're going to be talking about things like the art of the request, right? As mentioned before, so often we place demands and we don't even know that we're demanding, right? We don't know what demanding language looks like because that's just how we talk. But there's actually an art to requesting something of someone. There's an art and a little bit of like pizzazz that you can use to actually make and inspire someone to actually want to honor that request. There's language around compassionate understanding, right? A lot of times we think we understand our husband, but we come with assumptions, we come with judgments, we come with our own conclusions. And so in this course, I'm going to be teaching compassionate understanding, how to literally suspend all of your judgments and really listen and let your heart understand and express caring and compassion to your husband so that you can come to a whole new level of understanding of him and he can come to a whole new understanding of you. And stating your positive intent. That's a particular technique that is so important when you're approaching a difficult conversation. A lot of people will write me and say, hey, I want to talk to my husband about this, but I'm not quite sure what to do or what to say. And I always like to suggest, like, you have to start with what's on your heart. And there's a particular technique where you use your positive intent, you state your positive intent on the front end, which puts him in a different position, in a different mindset to listen more openly to what it is you have to say. So those are just a sampling of the things. Those are just a sampling of the right way to communicate that nobody ever really sits down and tells us. And it's not until you learn these things, it's not until you apply these things that you actually see what a difference it makes, right? I'm sure as you think about your own communication in the last week that there were many mistakes made, right? But that's just how you've always done things. That's just how you've always talked and how you said things. And you don't know a different way of doing it. I get asked all the time, well, how do I say that differently? Like, how do I stop doing that? I was doing a live stream for another group, and, we were talking about how we always say things like, you never do this, or you always. And I think I've done a live stream even here, talking about we're prone to dramatics. Like, we speak in this dramatic language, and nobody always does something, or nobody never does something. Like, those are extremes. And what do you say instead, right? You make observations instead. And there's a specific way to do that where you might start out and say, I notice every time, or I notice often, or I've noticed lately that this has been happening, right? That's very different from saying you always. And when you approach conversations in that way, you're going to get a different response. So again, you can learn the right way. And so if you're in a place where you just feel like you and your husband are speaking two different languages and you've completely missed the mark with each other on how to communicate in a way that's helpful and productive and beneficial to your marriage, I want to assure you, one, that you're not alone, because every couple struggles in communication, and two, that you can learn to do it a different way. And that the different way is easier, and it's going to feel better, and you're going to be proud of how empowered, how in control, and how caring and appropriate you can be in your communication to your husband. So if any of this sounds of interest to you, if you are interested in getting it right, then I encourage you to complete a questionnaire. That is the first step to accessing this program, because it's really important to me that, one, I understand what your communication goals are and that I understand what your issues are so that I can assure you and myself that the program and the curriculum and all that I have planned will actually meet your needs. I'm not interested in having anyone join this program and not get the results they want. So this questionnaire is really just an opportunity for me to get to know you a little bit better, what you're trying to achieve, and for me to assess your goals against the curriculum and the things that I will be teaching. So if you had the few minutes to listen to this live stream, you absolutely have the few minutes to complete that application. So I hope that you will do so. Once you complete the application, I will review it, and then I will actually send you a personalized video message with what I see in your application, my recommendations, and how I believe that the program, the Communication Cure, will help you meet your communication goals. So thank you for tuning in, and I look forward to hearing from those of you who are interested in learning the right way to communicate with your husband. Have a fantastic evening.